can someone who really knows that attic topography and what's filled with experts, where exactly is Thurry Cross? Is it about, I'm guessing it's about over there. A bit more sort of over there. Yeah, it's over there? Yeah? So, yeah, okay, it's quite a big hill, it's not an obvious route. No, okay, I've got some images on here. Is it easy to, someone help me? Just get these. Well, there's sorting out the topography, the technology. I love these images. I'm going to be talking about Thurry Cross, but just to say, it's not real. I mean, it's very evocative in one way, and it's totally not evocative in another way, because it's virtual, and we live our lives able to do these wonderful things with projections. So just, Fiona didn't mention my recent change of affiliation, which is kind of relevant.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right, I moved, no reason why you should, but I happened to move jobs from Royal Holloway, which is, allowed me to live in Oxford, which is fantastic, to teach in Devon. Okay, so I'm changing my environment. So I'm thinking quite a lot about where I live, my relationship to where I live. So just to focus you on what I'm going to talk about, here's a bit of Devon mud. And I go past this round, and I'd like you to actually get your fingers dirty, you know, make contact with something real, rub it in, get it under your fingernail, and then think, where do I stop and the earth start? I'll give that. I also brought in a little bit of Thames muck. I live by the river, which I'm moving to the top of the hill, which isn't a bad thing to do at this at the moment. This is a bit of Thames muck. It's sort of got some gravel washed down from Gloucestershire. It's got bits of coal that were brought out because it's on coal underneath. Within the old coal cellar, there's bits of rubble, bits of mud. And if you smell it, you'll get the unmistakable smell of the River Thames. So I'll give you that to sort of experience, handle, smell, taste if you want, but I don't recommend it. It's just, I'm talking about real space, the land we live on with. This is just, give you that in the middle, it's a flint I picked up on the South Downs, just a completely different environment. Again, just to remind you what it means to cut into stone. Yeah, just sort of think, make a computer diagram, cutting into stone and another story. Because am I being, where do I stand? Am I right now? Or are you looking at Dapple?
You should be down. You shall be down.
We look fine.
So that mud we forget about, but it's, of course it's inside us. That red stuff has got iron in it, so less risk of anemia when I'm down in Devon, probably. That red stuff, it's got a history too, when England was close to the equator and we were desert, and that's where it comes from. My hair will certainly feel different when I'm washing it in that water. So, you know, my relationship to the earth is quite a close one. One day, of course, let's not forget, we will all be joining that mud, and we'll be going back into it one day. What we see here will have crumbled and rotted and be back there in that mud again. We forget these things, so it's worth remembering. So Greek tragedy and the earth is my theme. It's widely held Greek tragedy is all about democracy. This has been a sort of mantra that's been around. There was a BBC 4 programme a few weeks ago, some of you may have caught it, that was sort of saying as though it was sort of the latest discovery, yes, Greek tragedy. It's tied up with democracy. Great, it's a wonderful thing to say that. We're Democrats, the Greeks were Democrats, so it shows something about us. It shows why Greek tragedy is a good thing to be teaching, you know, it's a great message to have. We like to construct Greek tragedy always in our own image, don't we? People have always done that, we do it. And it's useful to be aware of the process that we're engaged in. None of us can be absolutely neutral and objective, but we can at least try to get outside ourselves and see what's happening. Now, I'm passionate about democracy, of course. But the democracy that we have, I would say it's the same thing as they had in ancient Greece. What relationship does it have? Not a great deal that I can see. It's one thing about democracy. Another thing about democracy in its present form, as Rush has been reminding us, it's not great news for the planet, is modern democracy. The way it involves short-term planning, it encourages people to have game plans that are based on their nation against the interests of another nation. It's got hooked into capitalism, the idealisation of individual choice that is bound up with capitalism. It's also, as Rush reminded us, democracy's got locked into this humanist tradition that thinks only humans matter and other forms of life don't matter. So there are a whole set of problems around democracy, which I'd rather see as an ideal, a project, something that has got to carry on being renegotiated. It's going to mean something. And clearly the Athenians were very energetic at constantly changing the rules, trying to get something that was a bit more like democracy than what they were doing at any given time. So I'm delighted that Emmanuel has staged this event and perhaps opening up ways to think about Greek tragedy outside that particular sort of democratic old political books. Yeah, start with famous text from Antigone, the first Dasimon, meditation on man, a human being, who manages to conquer the high seas and winter. And then we come to the supreme God, Earth, who can't be worn away, is inexhaustible, and yet man is greatly awaited. Circling round with these horse-drawn ploughs from year to year, turning over the soil. It's very cosmic, this image of the ploughs going round and round, sort of linking human agriculture into the cycles of the earth. But this earth is quite a problem for us because she doesn't pop up in our childhood myth books. We can't visualise that easily. She doesn't pop up in drama either. She doesn't lend herself to anthropomorphic representation. So she doesn't get a hold on our modern imagination very much, because partly we live at a bit of a remove from the earth, surrounded by more and more virtual images. So on to democracy then. What is democracy? We tend to think of it in vertical class terms, the rule of the plebs, but I'd also like to think about it as the rule of the deans. Think of democracy in that spatial sense, which was pretty important in Athenian political strategy. It was crucial for democracy to work that the people on the margins, people out there over this mountain, were not isolated from the privileged who lived around the Acropolis. So that's why I'm going to focus this talk on Phrikos. You've seen images all around the room when we arrived. An obvious reason for focusing on it, of course, is that as everybody is becoming increasingly aware, it is our unique 5th century stone theatre. It's been held up as a prize exhibit by those who want to claim that it is essentially rectilinear. Yeah, it's been used to say that the theatre of Dionysus in Athens must have been like Phrikos in this particular form. It's a debate. The debate has been about geometry, and it got very bogged down. We've been waiting for new stuff to come out of the Athenian archaeologists and the gurus in Sydney to give us a bit more information. But in the meanwhile, everything's all got stuck on these competing diagrams on bits of paper, all worked out in terms of geometry. So what I'm interested in is just sort of changing the terms of that and thinking about space in a rather different way, about the relationship of theatre auditoria to landscapes, and bring in the tactile, acoustical, odoriferous aspects of space, which are a fundamental part of how human beings apprehend space. If you're blind, you don't suddenly lose your sense of space, you have a sense of space. So let's try and focus on not on those sort of abstract diagrams, but the flesh and blood human beings who lived in Phrikos. Why is our 5th century theatre here? So that one. Well, it's not in Athens, but partly rebuilding, but also Athens, Theatre of Dionysus. We had 1 or 2 events a year, stuck up all the hugely expensive, I imagine, wooden rostra that would then be taken down and used for the Panathenaia and other big spectacles. So we haven't got a stone theatre for that reason. But also, Phrikos, it's a multi-purpose space. So you'll be using it all around the year for assemblies, for all sorts of different rituals and sacrifices and so forth. So it's worth the investment. And then, of course, there's money. There's all that money from the silver industry. It's a prosperous place. It can afford to do it. Even though it's obviously a small community. Rectilinear. Put here I've widened out just so you can see it, the 4th century edition, so you can focus on the 5th century space that I've put in the mark where the temple was, and that's where the altar was. Why is it rectilinear? Well, you wouldn't want to hack into that lot, would you? I mean, just think, community of 5,000 people, you're busy trying to get your plough through the fields to grow something to live on, you're busy cutting into the seams to get the silver out, you're not going to want to try and get through that lot to create a beautiful circular auditorium. Building in a straight line just follows the landscape. said to be rectilinear, it's actually, there are two straight lines at a slight angle to each other. So if you're sitting at the end of the row, you can look sideways and see the person at the end of the other row. So it is not completely a straight line as comes out of a computer graphic. It is more in sympathy than that. Quite like the old theatre in Argos, which has got this. The vestiges, here they are running up there, and there's the later circling seats. Right, that 5th century Argos space, again you can see it's described as rectilinear, but actually there's a bit of a curve on it. So the Greeks didn't like rigidity on the whole, in the way that we have been taught to do. So the theatre has been built in sympathy with the landscape. Just if you look at the contour lines on the map and see how they run in here, then you can see where the curious asymmetry of the space is not just arbitrary, it's built because it's sitting in with the shape of the terrain. So people here live in close contact with that mountain, which is the source of their livelihood. Having said that, geometry does have its place. If we look at how it was planned out, then some fairly careful planning ad quadratum with a circle was used to lay it out, because there was clearly an awareness that acoustics and so on benefit from the harmonies of geometry. So there is a reconciliation of geometry with the strange asymmetry of the land. Yeah, I just want to look at these two. The mindset that produced the image below is not the mindset that produced the space above. And in terms of visualizing the audience, this modern reconstruction from the Munich Theatre Museum of what the Theatre Dionysus might be supposed to have been like. I don't find that an audience I can buy into. I find this photograph of a Greek audience gathered amongst the rocks much more sort of evocative of what Greek experience would be like. Okay, onwards. The mining industry. Just sort of look here, the theatre is right next to the mines and the washeries and the seams and the caves, and getting all that silver out, which funded the thing in the first place, presumably. Here are one of the washeries looking across, restored washery looking across at the theatre. Typical mine shaft entrance, another mine shaft entrance right next to the theatre. So that closeness to the land and the source of money is there. Let's go on. Let's also look at the necropolis. Yeah, underneath that's what you might call the performance space, the orchestra, right underneath it. The space where your spectator, his father might be buried, his infant died in infancy might be buried, so when you're very close to the dead who have become of the earth. There's the view from the necropolis looking up at Velaturi Mountain. Also, on Velaturi Mountain, there's the theatre. Here are all the Mycenaean tombs. There's one of the Mycenaean tombs all up on that mountain here. So, you're sitting in the theatre. Inside that mountain, there are the bodies of the Mycenaeans. So the people who we now think of as these abstract figures of myth, they are the generation of the ancestors. You are sitting, I think, almost on top of them, the people who are then brought to life in the performance. Right, it's also a processional space. There's the walkway down to the sea. The sea has retreated since the 5th century. It was a space where the procession arrived, therefore a bit like Ramnus here. So let's think Ramnus is here's what's called the orchestra at Ramnus. It's just a sort of space, really. It's a bit of ground where the procession arrives as it comes up the sacred way all the way along there. Here's a bit of the sacred way, going up to the Acropolis, tombs along the sacred way. I wasn't able to get to the theatre when I did my research on this years ago. It was all being dug up. So my wife diverted the janitor by painting his portrait, which allowed me to creep along the sacred way, past all these tombs, and get that sense of the journey towards the sort of mysterious sacred place, the Acropolis, that I was too cowardly, I regret it now, too cowardly to actually get on there, and there's the police being called. There we go. So the theatre then, it's not a space, it's a place. It's a place full of memories. And it wasn't an exceptional space in that point of view. Although our great mentors, Plato and Aristotle, did their best to abstract the gods out of existence, for most people in that audience, the gods were part of that landscape. Rush said just now, the gods acted through the phenomenal world. I prefer to rephrase that and say they were of the phenomenal world rather than a sort of something that went through it, if we could debate that. That place in the theatre in Thoricos was used for multiple sacrifices. We've got bits of the sacrificial calendar. Here are some of the people they sacrificed to. And these people, these figures, were of the land. Look at them. Demeter landed here when she was searching for her daughter. This is where she came ashore. She must have had some shrine in that landscape. Cephalus killed Procris here. They were from this place. Philonis was a nymph, I think, from here. Helen, well, there's an island just offshore that you could see where she's supposed to have consummated with Paris, so they sacrificed to her. Thoricos was the eponymous hero. He may have had the umbilical link to the centaur in a reference in Oedipus of Colonus indicates there might be a cult statue of Colonus. And then these figures at the bottom obviously are related to, must have had a shrine in those places, looking over the plain, guarding the gates, looking out to sea. These figures all inhabited that landscape. It was a place that was alive, the environment they inhabited. This is the death of Procris, if you remember the story. He had his unerring javelin, and of course it ended up killing the girl he loved. He'd been led astray by the goddess of dawn. Why the goddess of dawn? Well, of course, Thoricos faces east, so you get the beauty of the sunrise shining into that place. The Greek vase painters didn't do landscape, they just gave us the figures. But when the Renaissance got going, of course, then they had to put in the rocks of Thoricos and the view over the shore, looking out to put those people back in a landscape once again. So the shore faces east, the theatre faces south, which is quite a good thing because when you're doing the rural Dionysia in winter, you want every bit of sunshine you can get. So here we are, the modern desire to get this out of this. We've abstracted space. I find it hard to understand in England why the Scots get so upset by the status quo. And it's partly that's going off to Exeter, right down the other end of a railway line that's in trouble, that I'm aware of this, of the importance of the view from the margins, and that democracy meant the power of the deans. Getting into the Dionysia. Well, you could do that in the spring. Maybe the Odeon was a handy place to sleep out at night, since you probably couldn't get back between shows. And a thing that people don't tend to mention about the City Diners here, it took place at the full moon. And if you live in Thurrock Cross, that's really important because it gives you the freedom of the night to get there. You know, now we have all this electricity, we don't sort of think about these things anymore. In regard to time, right, the Dionysia was in this, determined by the sequence of lunar months. It was of the Earth in that sense. But when the Thurricians sent their 5 reps to participate in the council, that was not in the system of lunar months, that was the man-made time, the decimal time, which was a completely independent temporal system. So theatre is located within the cosmic temporal system, not the man-made system, and that's quite relevant to the sort of things the theatre ends up saying. So from these reflections, I want to go back to Antigone. Am I right on time? What should we do? Just a few, just briefly on Antigone, back to that first Stasimon, and it's a supreme citizen. Who is a supreme citizen? The chorus want this to be somebody who honours, I would say, the laws of the earth, but also the contract-based justice of the Olympian visualizable gods. And of course, the apolis person ignores all that. Cue enter Antigone, having been arrested for what she has been doing with the earth. She has, of course, been tipping earth over Polynices, so that Polynices can return to the earth according to the laws of nature. So it's very much a play about the relationship of the human beings and the earth. And then, of course, she gets walled up in a cave. I couldn't find a convenient Theban cave. This is a cave under the Areopagus. This is a sort of plausible candidate. I went and took my own photograph of it once. I couldn't find it for this, but it sort of was filled full of rubbish. That cave is a furious. You'd think it would be on someone's tourist agenda, but it's just used as a sort of convenient public toilet on the whole. Nobody is interested in the relationship of the Furies with the earth. Yeah, we want to know about the Olympian gods up there, what tourist cares? And that, of course, affects modern interpretations, because we don't buy this. The stuff about the land being plagued, people losing their livelihood. If you live off the land, if you're looking out here at the fields that produce the corn that you're not importing, then that really cuts to you. But now, when you get your food from the supermarket, then caves, the earth, don't matter the way they once did. This is from Richard's benefit, really. This is next on the edge of the theatre. They did hack into the rock to create this space, which is a bit like a telesterion with the seats cut in, it would have been walled in, a bit of darkness. In fact, if you're playing Antigone in this space, it is your perfect location as the artificial cave for Antigone to fetch up. And what the Thurricians actually did here, we don't know. It was a mystery. It's all secret. We don't have a clue. But it's a pretty big space, and it was quite a lot of hacking away at quite a lot of rock to create it. So if we imagine Antigone here, I'm trying to suggest what that performance in that environment would evoke. You have Eurydice going to die behind the Skene, just behind the Skene. What is the bodies of all the real dead? And then, of course, we've got this altar here. Geometrically, it would make sense if it was a statue base. But here's the altar. Tiresias' great speech, which is sort of the turning point when we know that Charles got it definitively wrong. All that image of rotting meat that won't burn. That audience was smelling meat, right? Those lines mean something different if you are smelling dead meat. Dead meat, we don't do sacrifice. That's partly because we don't like to think of ourselves as being one day dead meat. It's not a nice thought, really, but it's how it is. So, what I'm trying to suggest to you then is a slightly different way of looking at Antigone and what it's about, getting away from the democratic story that, okay, this is about two equally balanced ethical principles slugging it out in this battle of ideas, and actually we all know who the good guy is, don't we? Getting away from that story, so no, this is about human beings and their relationship to the earth. And all that, there's tensions I find there in the whole tension between human geometry and the natural environment. I think it's an important story to be telling because politics, the politics that we live by has got bogged down in this left versus right dichotomy, getting outside that left-right dichotomy to start thinking in terms of, well, where does looking after the environment fit into the agenda of the two political parties? It doesn't fit in. So if we can start telling a different story about Greek tragedy, then that may actually help us start telling different stories about the political environment that we ourselves inhabit. That's possible.